Namaste and welcome to today's Love Satsang about the topic ego versus soul, or how I put it, to end the ego games and start playing again from your soul. We will dive into a little bit at the beginning what the ego actually is, and there are multiple definitions, and maybe I kind of expand your view on it today so you get a better understanding of your own mechanisms, or in general how this life game functions, and also what I mean with playing these games in different scenarios or levels or dimensions, and also, of course, how you can finally transition from a more ego-based or ego-aligned way of living towards a soul-aligned, more soul-truthful living. And it is especially for those who are on that crossroads between something of the past is not working anymore, or doesn't feel really good to me, doesn't feel truthful for me, or maybe even this insight of somehow this limits me, that restricts me, towards transitioning to a more expanded view of themselves. And that is part of your awakening journey, of your soul's journey to remember itself again, or remember the divine through you. And as always, if you've followed my last satsangs, you know that I really love starting just with a small tuning in and anchoring our energies together, because I feel a lot is, in the beginning always scattered. Everyone comes from everywhere, and so we can merge the energies together in a single focused point of this moment. So I invite you, if you can, to close your eyes and just drink, just drop, just drop deeper. Maybe it wanted to come through to drink from your soul's nectar for a moment. Just to relax and focus, to bring your focus on the here and now. To withdraw any thoughts that are lingering to the past or future, to draw them in that single focus point. And maybe you want to visualize, to center it in your third eye. Or if you feel that's more aligned, then maybe also in your heart. Single focus point. That with each breath, you become more centered, more balanced, more aligned. And I invite you here at the beginning to focus not only on a single pointed point, but also on your very being, your own self. How do you perceive yourself? Maybe now here sitting with your body, what you're currently feeling, sensing, thinking, the blood flow and airflow through your body, all these different layers of your existence. So many indeed that once you start diving deeper into yourself, these layers somewhat never end. And I want you to define yourself. So if you wanted to use words, which are of course always intrinsically limited, dual in nature, how would you describe yourself? Just very basic, maybe. What is your name, your age, your birthday, where you were born, nationality. Maybe you define yourself as tall or small, as intelligent, as smart, as down to earth, as spiritual. Whatever comes into your mind first, just play with me for a moment to define yourself. And I want you to focus especially on the, in dual language, the more lightful, the positive, uplifting words about yourself. And then make a stop, make a break, take a deep breath. And imagine that all of these words, these labels, fall away from you. One by one, falling away from you, from your perception, from your belief system, from your energy, from your physical body. All these labels, they are falling away, leaving you, in a way, soul naked. And then find here a word. What describes your essence? If there is a word at all. What are you beyond the labels you give yourself or have been given? Beyond the story you tell yourself? And beyond your belief system that puts you in a specific framework? And I want you to notice the vastness of that very essence of your being. That behind all these labels is, as we often say, everything and nothing at the same time. The paradox of life. And just breathe that perception, or this, maybe you have some realization, breathe that into your body. Let it sink into your mind, heart, energy field. And then just slowly rub your palms to feel yourself again in this physical form. And touch yourself awake, coming back into the space. And opening your eyes whenever you are ready. That was a short dive into transitioning from the definitions you give yourself to the nothingness or everythingness you already actually are beneath all labels. And I want to start with the grand topic of what the ego is, because the ego is exactly this limited perception of yourself, this framework made up of labels you give yourself or you have been given yourself and you believe in. So it's kind of like a fixed construct, a fixed belief of yourself. Okay, this is me. I define me like this. These are my attributes, my characteristics, my personality. All labels, yeah, are kind of like stamped onto you, and you believe in it. That is something rigid. Like from the ego perspective, at least, it gives a definition of your indefinite self, because in order to live ourselves, in order to experience ourselves as separate, as a separate being, we have this, or the divine has this concept of restricting our view. So we can actually, or it can perceive itself as a limited, separate being from the vastness of existence that encompasses everything. The ego is one tool, one mechanism, a smart program, we can also say, a smart program that is installed on our system so that we have the perception, the illusion of feeling us as separate, as a separate being, as a separate identity. It is part of the life game, interwoven into the life game, to actually experience us as separate and come into the remembrance back that we are everything. That's the whole arc of the life game, to lose ourselves, to find ourselves. So we are kind of like oscillating, or the divine is oscillating through us from forgetting into remembering into forgetting again. Or we can also say, if we journey through lifetime after lifetime, we start with forgetting everything, and circle, spiral upwards, yeah, spiral into remembrance with each lifetime, with each, actually with each experience, also within one lifetime we get glimpses into what we actually are, or what we can be. Because if we are everything, we can be everything and anything. But the ego, the identity, is a fixed, limited, dense, and therefore also why we can perceive ourselves in this body as a dense being, as separate from others. Yeah, we are not tucked or like taped to someone else with a body, to have this very, very dense form of separateness. And that is beautiful from a soul's perspective. Is actually like, interesting. This is how I feel when I'm separate. This is how I feel when I forget. Because actually, your soul, if you tap into your soul level, the soul is directly connected with the divine, obviously. So it never forgets. It never forgets. The forgetting is kind of more like a mechanism when you descend into form that wields the truth. Yeah, the wheel of forgetting. You've maybe heard of that. It wields the truth. So you kind of like go with your glasses through this life and perceive yourself in a limited way, because from the higher level of I'm everything, descending into form means also, I want to experience and explore and remember myself through a very specific life path. Yeah, that's why we all are on the higher level connected. But when we come down here, when we look at the human level, we all have different labels. Yeah, we have different labels depending on our own energy and depending on what we came here to explore and experience. And around this, the structure of ego, which is very much connected with your identity, forms, especially during your childhood. Because I feel like when we come into the world as a child, we don't really have these conditionings. But once we are conditioned, yeah, we run through this conditioning phase of society, of what is wrong or right, yeah, of this dual nature on this planet. We form the identity, because duality also is separateness or separation and oneness. And the dual nature of this planet allows us to explore both separateness and oneness. It's a dance between both. And we have to understand, especially, I feel like a lot of people, when they are at the beginning of their journey of awakening and ascension, they still think a lot in dual terms. And from the divine perspective, you have to see that there's no judgment between separation and oneness, because everything is one. Yeah. And so there's also no judgment about the ego. The ego is not bad. the ego is not wrong. The ego is not dark or something you have to get rid of, or that you have to finger point in others. And that is a lot what people do, and it's maybe part of a remembrance, actually, that the ego is nothing bad, nothing like a curse. Sometimes it's titled like a curse or a torture or something we have to break free from. And that can be also a catalyst for your soul to feel in this way first, to break free and experience oneness if it's that of your path. But in essence, I just want to clearly state here in the beginning that the ego per se is nothing bad, but it allows us to explore, to dance between the polarity of separation and oneness. So that, first of all, that also when you sense in yourself, this is coming from my ego, or this is coming from an egoistic place, or from a limited viewpoint of forgetfulness, that you also don't judge yourself, but that you feel more in acceptance, and also like what I just even also actually said, like this is interesting, this comes from this place, to tap into your observer and see yourself like, this is how I operate on the egoic level, and this is how I operate on the soul level. And that is something that naturally comes on your journey, on your path. The ego also, we can distinguish ego from soul, when we find control, attachment, and fear. 3 basic indications. I already dropped them here, so you can feel a little bit more, okay, this is ego, this is soul. Ego is based on fear, control, and attachment, and we dive in a little bit more deeper later. What I also wanted to mention before is actually this journey of us finding ourselves in ego and wanting to transition through soul. And sometimes maybe you don't even name it, I want to connect with my soul again, but it's a natural intrinsic call at some point of something limits me. I have something to discover still. There is something more out of it. The questioning starts. So first we are in this forgetfulness, and we are also kind of like happily living our life in this identity that we created, not even knowing, this is an identity. We don't even question it at the beginning, and you maybe perceive it with others. If you're already a little bit more aware, you can even see in others, why is that person behaving in such a limited view of themselves, or saying so self-limiting things to themselves, which is actually linked to their belief system, which is limited in that view. So operating from identity is our first baseline in a way. And during the course of our life, we get experiences and mirrorings, like reflections from other people, or we get at least some point of trigger that triggers us into questioning, who am I, or what am I actually behind all what I think I am? What is the story, if there is a story at all, because actually the story is the identity. The divine has no story, except maybe we can say it's playing the forgetting and remembering, and from separation to oneness, from oneness to separation. But we start questioning, and something triggers that. And maybe sometimes even what I talked in the last episodes about the tower moment and the void state. These are classical phases when this questioning deepens to question your own self. And then the identity already changes or crumbles. The beliefs you have about yourself feel less valid. And for an identity to be rigid and to be kind of like your framework, where you feel like, I can only operate in this limited self, is when you only believe in this identity. When you question, you open that framework you have put yourself into a more expanded view. And over the course of questioning and remembering and contemplation and mystical experiences as well, you open that limited self more and more and more. It expands back, or it merges back into the universal field of oneness. A trigger is the point, the transition point where it switches. And then it is a phase of questioning, contemplation, usually like diving into different spiritual tools and techniques because you feel like there's more there. Or I want to find out, what am I behind the labels, behind my little I? And oftentimes also first cognitively, like with our mind, we research, we read books, we study and feel like, yeah, that makes sense. And then it transitions more into a felt sense, dropping into the body. I often mention this, like first, we often conceptualize spirituality, but it is also not only to ascend upwards into all these concepts and shooting out of your third eye into higher consciousness, but then actually also to bring it down and to make it a lived experience. So it's ascension and descension, co-creation of both. Because I feel like sometimes it's bypassed, it's just is ascension without descending. But what happens then? You expand your view, you expand and expand and expand. And the limited self of ego has just played one game within the big game of life, of existence. But once you expand it, and the more you expand it, you see like, I can change consciously my identity. I can give myself different labels. I can play different roles. I can put on different masks. And sometimes that in the beginning happens a bit more unconsciously. Yeah. And then it becomes more a false self, also not living your soul. And at some point, if you're more like, proficient in the game, you can say, it becomes a conscious game. It becomes like, which character do I want to explore now? Which identity do I want to give myself? And usually this is when people tap into the game of manifestation, which is actually the descension of the ascension, we can say. Yeah? It's in a way seeing yourself as, I have quantum field of possibilities, who I can be because I am everything. And then I focus on one specific identity that I draw into my field so I can experience it. And that is actually a kind of like childish play of using that concept, not being fixated, not being ignorant to other opportunities and possibilities for yourself. Because when we get stuck into the ego construct, oftentimes people have a victim mentality, like, I'm just this is this way, I've been raised this way, this is because of XYZ, and this is why I cannot break out of it. That's the ego trying to keep the limited self stable. Because one mechanism of the ego is to cling to that perceived, believed identity. It clings to it because when you actually go out of it and see like, I'm everything, I can play with it, ego dies. That's the ego death. Yeah, and we have multiple ego death. It's not just one big one, but usually multiple ego death when we realize, this was a limited perception of myself, my ego clinging to something that I'm not truly in my essence, that not truly is my essence. The ego clings, resists, controls, attaches to this identity you have been built around yourself, how your life should look like, how others want to see you, all these conditionings, labels, your perceived self. That is what your ego clings to because it wants to stay separate. That's a mechanism of the ego. Once you acknowledge and see that, zoom out of your ego and more into your soul, you see like, this is the mechanism built into this human game. So I can perceive myself as separate, but also break free into or expand myself back again into oneness, and then play with my identities. And in the higher stage, what I also teach, it is about the soul aligned identity. Because once you have explored multiple identities, feel like, okay, I've played this game, I've played this game, this game, this game, yeah, archetypes, the different archetypes of your being, there comes also a higher point of being where you feel like, actually, all of these identities, these labels that I give myself even consciously, they don't feel true to my own being. They don't feel true. They feel still false. They feel still like playing a role, wearing a mask. So this is a higher stage, yeah? Just to tap that also in, where you feel like, okay, I want to really decipher my soul and what my soul energy or energetic blueprint for this lifetime is. Yeah, so just to maybe structure it in a little bit in a way again. Limited ego self clings to one single identity that is separate of everything. You question at some point, triggered by some external or internal event, you question this limited self, asking, who am I? What am I beneath all this? You open more out of this clingy self, open more out of it, and perceive yourself from different angles and see, actually, I'm much more than this limited self. And the more you expand and see yourself from different angles and perspectives, the more you see your vastness, your greatness, your grandness, your smartness also, because it's the divine playing through you, the genius inside of you. And then you start consciously shaping your identity shifting, timeline jumping, quantum jumping, all, or manifestation, all I categorize in this phase of, I see, I can play with my own self. I can see myself from different angles, from different mirrors. Yeah, I can mirror myself in different mirrors. And I can expand my view. And then I can focus on this identity, on this identity, on this identity, whatever your soul's desires are. Maybe you want to experience a luxury life, yeah? Then focus on that. Maybe you want to experience more the hermit, transcendent, spiritual guru life, yeah? Exaggerated, of course. Then focus on that. And maybe it even like doesn't really make sense from outside. Then give yourself the permission to play with it no matter what, because it is your life, yeah? All others are just side characters to your play, we can say. So this middle phase is of seeing yourself from different angles, consciously tapping into different identities, because with each identity we also expand our self-awareness and we regain clarity about our own gifts, our abilities. It's kind of like collecting parts of ourselves, finding more wholeness within ourselves. And after that, playing different identities, consciously playing with identities, then comes the even more expanded state of being, of seeing, okay, yes, whenever I want, I can play with the identities. Maybe at some point, I need this identity to activate something inside of me, or maybe I need in another scenario a different identity so that someone else can learn something from me, or it's like a soul contract thing. But at the later stage, it comes a point of I'm everything, so I drop all labels. I empty myself. I empty myself so I can align with this lifetime's soul blueprint. To decipher my essence in so detail that this identity that others perceive of me becomes more or less, or not equal. I would say it's maybe not even possible to really equal it, but to approximate it over time, to become that soul-aligned identity. And after that, of course, we can also say the last, or maybe the last stage, is to, again, empty yourself completely, become so empty that you dissolve back into the oneness field, which is game over in the way. Like, yeah, maybe even consciously game over. Like, I've played enough lifetimes after lifetimes. I've played enough between this game of ego and identity, of forgetting and remembering. I remember everything of me, or enough that I can say this earth game is finished. Yeah, maybe you can see now the evolution actually of also where you currently stand between ego and soul. Again, it's no judgment. Where you are is perfectly fine because it is where your soul wants to be. Where your soul is actually currently seeing this is my biggest field of expansion. Because sometimes what happens inside of us or when looking at others, when we are more aware, we kind of sometimes tend to, they are too much in their ego. I want to awake them. I want to show them actually how much they are. And sometimes there's discernment. Are they actually not maybe exactly where they are because their soul wanted them to be, to explore that, yeah, maybe not, again, this limited self? Or are you then interfering with their own process? Or are you therefore a catalyst? Yeah, sometimes you're also a catalyst. If you are already exploring this, you're maybe a catalyst, and by showing yourself to live different aspects of yourself, to give another one a mirror, kind of like a sometimes like a permission slip, or like a, yeah, like an example. This is also you. This is also available for you. Yeah. If we are to coming back to the ego structure maybe a little bit, because I framed this live today in the way of breaking free from the ego games and transitioning into your soul, or that your soul can breathe and play again, is that we need a little bit more of an understanding of the ego. And I already mentioned you can easily find egoistic tendencies if you have fear, if you have attachment, or if you want to control something. Three major things that we can distinguish ego from soul. Because what is soul in contrast to this? Not fear, it is love. It is not control, it is trust and surrender and flow. It is not attachment, because attachment kind of like, yeah, is connected with lack, with a feeling of lack. Because the soul knows I don't lack anything, I'm already everything. I have everything and I am everything. Yeah. And we have layers. We can say we have layers of egoistic structures around ourselves. I sometimes also see like the soul as the core of our being, our essence. And around this, multiple layers of ego, of conditioning, of, yeah, in a way, false selves. Like, as if like life is about unpeeling, unlayering yourself so that you can see your own true reflection, your own self again, your soul's core, this luminous, vibrating, high vibrational being, or all vibrational being actually. Yeah, it's not anymore about high or low, it's about it is. It is what it is. So when you play and perceive fear, which we in a way all have, and there's a mechanism that is also healthy, which is kind of like if your house is burning down, of course you have fear to be burned in a way, and it's a survival mechanism. Yeah, we can also say they are deeply rooted ancestral, or like human-based survival mechanisms, and then it's of course not unhealthy. It's a survival mechanism to keep us going. But if it's something like, yeah, I fear that I lose this person, or I fear I lose money, or I feel I lose whatever, or I fear I I am not loved. I fear if I do XYZ, they will reject me. Yeah, all this is more ego based fear. Then attachment is clinging. from a soul perspective, we have already everything. Quantum field has everything. We just have to focus in. I mean, it's not always that easy, but because it's multi-layered also with entanglements and collective evolution and soul contracts and so forth. But focusing on a thing, drawing it, magnetizing it into your field, and that's more soul-based playing. Ego is like, I have to hold on to it. I have to cling to it because otherwise I'm lacking of it. I mean, usually the ego is a little bit thinking, when I let it go, it's away, it's gone, it's not there anymore. The soul is more like, okay, I have it already. Even if I let it go or hold not tight onto it, it's somewhere there. And actually, when it's meant to be in my life, from a human perspective, if it's meant to be still in my life, it will still be there. Even if I let it go, it will come back if it's meant to be. That's a trusting mechanism of more soul-based, soul-led play of the game. And then we have control. Control oftentimes is also mistrust in a way. Yeah, control is, I have to know everything in advance. I have to know how my life goes. I have to plan. I have to calculate. Very much mind-based, actually. I have to control because the unknown feels threatening to the ego. And from a soul point of view, if you're playing this game of Earth more soul-led, the unknown becomes rather curiosity, interest, childlike, there's something unknown, surprise me, universe. That's more the soul. Yeah? So maybe you can already see yourself where you oscillate. And maybe also you can reflect, because I always invite you to look at your own life, not only to listen to the concepts I'm sharing, but to reflect them on your own experience and for yourself to always discern, okay, what feels true to me and what is my point of view on it. Yeah? To see, in which areas of life, maybe you have also a very specific scenario in your life or repeating pattern where you can see fear, attachment, control. Any of those, or maybe even a combination of it. And then to observe yourself from a different angle and say like, okay, this is interesting. This is a life area or a situation where it seems that my ego is running the show. And that's okay. Maybe that's your experience. But if you want change, don't complain yourself that you are still there, but reflect yourself, because this is when we complain like, somehow I'm stuck, victim mentality, taking self-responsibility, to look deeper and find why or what for. Why am I behaving that way? Or what for is my ego still in that pattern in this situation or life area? And usually it is also connected with a way of protection, of self-protection. The ego is very good at protecting, this is me, this is my identity, this is my life story, this is whatever, whatever you associate with yourself. Attachment. Because it is a way to protect this identity. The ego is that mechanism that wants to protect. That's the role of it. The soul, on the other hand, full of love energy, we can say, feels like, I don't really have to protect anything because I'm love. And love is everything, includes everything, and is intrinsically protected, we can say even. Yeah. And it is much more loose. Ego, identity, protection. And this protection mechanism, I don't want to dive in too deep into that, but it is also connected, of course, with past experiences. Past experiences, especially those who hurt you, who triggered you, who were that were painful. Yeah, situations of the past that were painful reinforce protection mechanisms of the ego. And actually what we can see also here is that the ego is a lot based on past stories and on belief. The ego is a construct made of beliefs that you made from past experiences and from the conditioning of others, from the beliefs of others, so to say, yeah? Society, your parents, friends, close people, and even social media, yeah, we can say, or anything out there in the vastness of the internet, also influences your belief system. So your ego is fed, yeah, feeding. It is fed by your own belief system, how you perceive yourself, how you're conditioned, and how the past experiences influenced you. And so if we want to break out of this fixed construct of the ego, there's also a whole world of inner healing of the child, of trust, of the connection to the divine, because the divine and the ego are like opposites, more or less, even, we can say, although the divine, obviously, it includes the ego from a different perspective. But if we are so much in our ego, we have lost the contact. It somehow blurs this path, this channel upwards. So we have to look also how or why we constructed a specific structure around ourselves through our beliefs and past experiences. And sometimes that means healing the inner child, healing mother-father wounds, healing trauma, healing relationship patterns, healing the love to ourselves. Very common topics we all have to, or are allowed to or invited to go through. All of these healing modalities are actually there to free us from a protected, limited self, to open our heart and expand into the vastness of existence and start playing really. Because what we perceived as playing was much more a cave or prison. Like a little bit like a child in a room, imprisoned in a room, just being able or allowed to play with one toy. Yeah. And once we realize that and we find the key to the door and open that door into the vastness of possibilities, we see all these other toys, metaphorically speaking. And we also see all these other players, new players. Maybe we have even just played on our own in this imprisoned room with our one toy. And when we open up, when we release the armor around ourselves because we have found our own self-love and self-worth and the connection with the divine, a whole new level of the game starts. And that is something I feel in this time quality a lot of souls are initiated into. Or we can also say the soul already shows before incarnation. I want to find the keys out of this limited room, out of this limited self-identity construct. And I want really to start playing again on this planet, on this dimension. I don't want to bypass everything and transcend my body, but I want to use the concepts to play on this earth game. And that's actually a mastery, we can say. A mastery is not I transcend upwards, I talk with my spirit guides and angels and past life healing and regression and in all these dimension Akashic readings. A true mastery, if you reframe that for yourself, maybe. True mastery is to know all of this, you're everything, and then to bring it into this form and play in this body as that character in a way, but soul embodied. Soul embodied. soul aligned, a soulful play. So we always play the game of life, but you have a choice, or the soul chose already, in which level you want to play, or maybe you don't even want to put it in a hierarchy. It's maybe just different scenarios where you want to play. So sometimes I feel it's really like, yeah, if you imagine you have a computer game, there's one encompassing computer game, but then you have different worlds to choose where you want to play. And that's the same. That's the same. Maybe you're like, I want to play this game where I perceive myself as a limited being in this egoistic structure, and forget who I am, and I fall into victim mentality, and I feel like I cannot even get out of it. And if you've played enough of this, at some point your soul is like, okay, I've integrated that enough, I've seen that enough, it becomes boring, this game, so I want to zooming out again into the vastness of possibilities, like, what do I want to play next? I'm going now to this scenario of, I want to ascend, I want to feel more my core, my essence again, I want to enjoy playing and not being depressed in playing, yeah. And from a higher perspective, I mention that often, but from a high perspective, there's no judgment if you play this game of ego, if you play this game of soul, if you play that game of the dark entities, dark forces, or if you play the game of the light workers and angels. All the same, because the divine wants to experience itself from different angles. And your soul kind of is a fragment of that whole complete vastness of existence. And through your being, whichever way your soul chose, that it is exactly how it wanted to experience itself through you. I'm just giving some clues for all those who are done playing the ego limited self and say like, okay, this game, not game over, but I have completed this game. I have completed all initiations, all lessons. I've learned it and integrated it, and I'm ready to go to my next scenario. Yeah. To my next scenario, and I want to explore myself from a different view, a different angle. And that is, in my opinion, always back to the soul. Not to transcend, but to ascend and then descend into the body. And that is, in a way, how you change game. Not game, the whole game, but how you change the field or the framework in which you play. Because as a human or even as another being, we always need kind of like a framework to experience ourselves in a specific framework. Because what we did a little bit at the beginning, what happens if you have no words, no labels, no identifications at all? You become, in a way, from this human perspective, lost in, like in the void state. You become lost. And the void state, by the way, can also be this switch off game you play. This may be the mechanism actually of your soul, very smart always, smartly enough to drop all the techniques and all the tools even that worked in that scenario of the game, because they won't work in this scenario. You have a whole new world when whole new characteristics of you are asked to explore and expand, whole new toolbox, whole new way of relating between you and the world and others. There are different, let's say, in a way, with framework, I mean, there are different, it's a bit like the rules of the game, we can say. The rules, a little bit different rules that we have to tap into and learn. And what is the purpose? Always and again, to expand. Yes, to liberate, but especially to expand. And expansion never ends. Expansion never ends. Because you are it. It is you. And sometimes that's, for the human limited mind, very hard to understand, because it is not to be understood. It is something to be remembered, and where you have sometimes glimpses into only. Like maybe these these moments where you sit like, my hand, and you look a long time at your hand and you're like, what is this hand actually? This belongs to me and I can touch myself, who's looking through me. If you do that long enough, sometimes there are these moments like, wow, this all of this feels so like a fiction, like a movie I'm in, very surreal. So the more aware you become, it becomes actually also a very mystic play. Some things are sometimes really out of your human body system. Yeah, and you can also play with it, like astral travel and all the things. And I feel collectively, if we tap into that energy as well, collectively, more and more people want to play another game, not that alone in a room, one toy game, but opening to the possibilities and also to play together. Yeah, co-creation, cooperation. Aquarian age is a lot about merging again by co-creating. It's not really like losing your identity yet, but more so an opening of your viewpoint of, this other one is also part of me, and I came here, I incarnated here this time with these and these characteristics, which is still an identity, by the way, and the other one has these characteristics, and we can play with these characteristics and something new emerges. That is our current time quality, I feel, like opening each other to each other's expanded identities, we can say, not stuck in ego anymore, but much more from love, from the sense of we belong together, somehow we are connected, and then play and see what happens when we play with each other. Yeah, this is what's happening collectively, globally, in a way. And of course, before that can happen at a large scale, we always, or let's say, actually, we always have souls still wanting to experience the ego game. No judgment. Some are just, okay, I want to experience this. And even if a lot of people are already playing together in love, harmony, unity, balance, more soul-based game, even then maybe some soul says like, oh, so many people are now in this other game. I want to experience what it is, what it feels like when I am one of the few ones, very, very contracted. Yeah, we can also see the ego is like a very contracted form of your being, whilst your soul aligned identity is in this lifetime the most expanded state of identity you can achieve. And after that comes the transcendence into, I drop all labels and I just am. And that's also very good practice in between, of course, like in meditation to what we did, just to sit and imagine like, okay, my body vanishes, my emotions vanish, my thoughts vanish, my energy vanishes, and what remains then afterwards, and to sit and feel into that energy. Yeah, really that vibration behind everything, the behind everything. So I hope you have some more insights into this whole game and how you can play it. And of course, there's so many topics I could dive in with that, but that was the main part I wanted to share today, so that you feel like you are not just this, you are this. And probably also you know it, but it is sometimes actually a permission to live it. A permission, especially for those who are much more focused on the outside world, on other people, what other people think when you change, what other people perceive of you, like, like, because you're obviously interconnected with others. And a lot of people have this conception, okay, I cannot change because I'm interwoven in this constellation of family, of friends, of colleagues, of maybe outside world, like really like being being with your face outside in social media, for example. I mean, allow yourself to change. because change is, as we know, the only constant in a way in this universe. And when you allow yourself to change identities by consciously shaping that identity of, looking inside, sensing, okay, this is my soul's next desire, and this identity is kind of like required for me to experience that life. If you don't allow yourself to change, you hold yourself back, you restrict your own evolution. It's not about the others. Make yourself the main character of your story. And maybe I will also have a satsang about that topic, about make yourself the main character of your story. I feel this is a topic we can dive into also. Anyways, but identity changes naturally over time. And the gift is when you see already all these interconnections and what I shared today, that you can consciously use it to let yourself really play. Play with the identities which actually shape your reality, because you first tap into one identity and the outside arranges itself. So if you want to manifest XYZ, start with yourself. It's not about I want to manifest this car or house or partner. It's about who do I need to be, which identity do I need to embody and vibrate energetically in to attract this, to magnetize it into my field. So there's a whole vastness, and I know sometimes in between this journey we can get so lost and depressed, even frustrated, especially in this dark night of the soul, which is actually rather the dark night of the ego or ego death phase, where everything feels crumbling because actually the ego grasps, holds onto it because it wants to survive, and it clashes against your soul, pressing this shell open. That's ego death in a way. In another sense, metaphorically, like your ego is clinging to that identity, but your soul is trying to crack the shell open, so actually your soul, which is inside, if you see it that way, shining inside of the ego, can release, can be free again, so that we don't feel trapped in that sense, but that we allow our emotions, but that we always see the bigger picture of it, the bigger picture of why it's happening, what for, and what actually comes after that phase. Your soul is orchestrating in a very smart way everything. And in that journey, you will automatically connect more with your soul by you internally. Question in the chat: why does the soul, so complete, want to live such a limited existence governed by the ego? Why choose this earthly life and trapped, not free and limited? Unlimited, probably. Yes, as I said, the ego is that mechanism where the divine through us, or the soul, can experience a part of itself which is an illusion, to remember again. We need a contrast to remember again. If we already knew, okay, we are everything, we have no, the dual nature of our dual nature, duality, is the principle to be mirrored the opposite, to remember the opposite. Yeah, does that make sense? So, for example, you wouldn't, very, very simple example, you wouldn't know what is light if there's no darkness, and vice versa. You wouldn't know as a being what is darkness when there's no light. So we need an opposite polarized mirror in a way, which is the ego, which is illusion, which is forgetting. So we remember again. Remembrance cannot happen if everything is already clear. Then the game is not really actually starting at all. there's no game if we have no dual nature. And the mechanism is in the way. Some get lost in duality. Some feel like light and soul is higher value than ego and illusion. the mastery is in seeing all is the same, all it is what it is, and all is in the same way divine. It's a big orchestration. So in a way, the soul, I mean, the soul is never limited. Yeah, the soul is the soul. It's highly connected with the divine. It's always what it is. But when we descend down in this physical human experience, that is where the limitation happens. And yeah, if we tap a little bit into other beings, and some may resonate with it and some may not resonate with it, but if we perceive the soul experiencing itself simultaneously, not only on this planet but on other planets and in other forms, or not even this dense form, we can say that the earth school is a great way for the soul to experience this limitation. What does it mean to be limited? Because imagine if you always play the game, it's the same. If you always play the game of I know already everything, I'm everything, it will be joyful in a way, but at some point there will come a point of I know already everything. It's boring. It's getting boring. So you will find a way, and that's how a lot of people see it, the divine in a way, if you personify it. It's boring to always play the same game. So limitation is a way of wheeling the truth to find the truth again. It's for its own sake of exploration. Yeah, does that make sense? And therefore we have this mechanism of the ego. One mechanism. I mean, it's interrelated also with conditioning, especially, and experiences, lifetimes. Therefore, limitation is not negative. From a soul perspective, limitation is not negative, but a mechanism to find truth again. It's also when we see in life, oftentimes, yeah, maybe you have also an example of your own life. We experience often first the opposite of what we actually want to experience. Classical example is money, because money is very densely integrated into the matrix as well, so it's entangled in a lot of things. But a lot of people experience first lack and restriction due to money, scarcity, to actually reflect themselves what money is at all, how to handle money in an energetic way. Yeah, it's a learning process that can happen due to untruth. Because I mean, we don't have to earn money. We don't it's just implanted into the game. It's one feature. Because we know, even if we come from other star systems where no money is a thing, it's kind of like, actually I can just manifest and everything is there. But on this earth game, money is intrinsically interwoven, is a feature. So we perceive lack, so we can contemplate, remember, reflect, to see nothing is actually external from me. Nothing is truly lacking. If I am everything, money is part of me, of that energy field. And then it's a way of learning how to tap into abundance again. Lack and abundance are kind of like opposites. So you perceive this as lack, and then you learn a way to tap into your own abundance, and then it shifts also in the reality. So we always have the opposite to remember ourselves. That's the whole point. And it's really not governed fully by the ego, but more so your soul orchestrates everything. If we are truly connected with our soul, we have I can just say I'm in awe with it, because it's just divine genius. And last time I already dropped this image of seeing your soul having this puppet of you doing your things here on planet Earth. Yeah, your soul already knows everything, but it drops the keys that I also mentioned last time. It drops the clues, the codes for your human self to untangle from forgetting into remembrance. Yeah. And the best analogy I can just repeat is really if you have a favorite game and imagine you have played this game so many times, you want something different. Yeah, at least a little tweak in this game. Because even at some point, maybe you have deciphered that game so much in each and every step that you can already anticipate the next move of other players. That you have mastered maybe even that game and you can always win. And at some point, winning becomes boring. You want a twist and tweak in this game. Hmm? So, this is what I would love you to contemplate further on. Maybe seeing the stages, if you want to replay that, and the stages where you are currently in, not to judge yourself, but just to observe yourself and reflect, this is my soul's path, my evolution, to be grateful for yourself where you currently are, and to also maybe observe others around you where they are in their journey between ego and soul. And yeah, that's for today. I hope you find playfulness again. I know it's sometimes difficult when in perceived darkness, which is also an illusion, but to play, to start playing, not with a single toy, but with all the toys available for you. If you open your awareness, if you open your or expand your belief system and see everything is me, and I can consciously choose from now on, this is my grand, vast field or arena or stage for playing in devotion to my soul. And devotion to soul means for me to honor your soul's path and the experiences you want to make here on earth, and to then be in love with your own self, with your own soul so much that nothing and no one can stop you in evolving, in changing, and exploring your own self from different angles, which means in here, in this embodied form, from different identities. And if so, maybe that's also on your path to connect to your essence so deeply that you only want to live in soul aligned identity, which is just a single one. And that you become a very, very clear mirror for others to remember the truth as well. As always, so much love and so much bliss, and enjoy playing. Namaste. Thank you so much.